Welcome to today's Training Tuesday. I am Heidi Reese, the Training Programs Manager for Dayton Superior. And I'm excited that you decided to join us for the Steel-Ply form maintenance. A couple of items before we get started. Just want to remind everyone that those who have joined the webinar have joined muted so that there aren't any interruptions and we can focus on learning our topic. But I don't want you to stop from interacting with me. You can do that through Zoom, through the functionality, either through chatting or the Q&A. Ask questions throughout, make nice comments, whatever. And definitely at the end, we will do a mini question and answer session, and we'll get that going at the very end. Plus, I want to remind you that all of our webinars are recorded and available on DaytonSuperior.com, both the YouTube channel as well as DaytonSuperior.com official website. Just search for Training Tuesday and you can find them all out there. So, real quick, another housekeeping before we get to Mr. Chuck. Just want to remind everybody out there that this presentation is intended for training purposes only. Anything that we talk about as far as products, please go to DaytonSuperior.com to get the technical specifications, the safety documents, application guides, everything, anything along the lines of the products mentioned. You can find everything out there at DaytonSuperior.com. So who the heck is Dayton Superior? We are the leading provider of engineered solutions for concrete construction industry. And we specialize, as I'm sure you know, accessories and chemicals, forming, like we're going to talk about today. And we have proven solutions through the Symons forming and shoring, concrete repair and restoration, bridge deck, rebar splicing, precast and tilt up constructions. In addition, we have the largest engineering group in the industry, and they can provide you with, the engineering PE stamps that you may need, obviously questions and answers, and then specifically we can do training. So Chuck and I are here for you if this training is just a quick blurb of, can only be about, half an hour. So if there's something that you need that's more customized or something, a different topic, please contact us at training@DaytonSuperior.com. Okay, like I said, today we're going to go over Steel-Ply forming maintenance. And here to present with us is Mr. Chuck Hoke. He is our seasoned national training manager at Dayton Superior, and he's clocked in nearly 50 years in the concrete construction industry. Man, Chuck, you're old. I'm just kidding.
I know.
It means I'm getting old too. And he's been close to 30 at Dayton Superior, so he is truly a treasure trove of knowledge for us. He's been navigating sales in accessories and forming chemical product lines, you name it. He's been there, done that. So with his expertise and degrees in business and civil engineering, he's the guy to solve any hiccup. Yes, I said hiccup. And he's here with us to share some of that knowledge on forming maintenance. So take it away, Mr. Chuck.
All right. Well, thank you, Heidi.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna get my canes and get over here because I've been here so long.
Did you forget your walker again?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
So today we're going to talk about Steel-Ply and Sym-Ply form maintenance. And the reason we put these two form systems in the same category is they are plywood face steel framed systems. So typically what we are looking from with this expectation here is what is clean. Now, clean isn't like my wife's clean. It doesn't have to be polished right to the shine. What we're looking at is that you're going to get all of the existing concrete and the majority of the lattice from the concrete off of the form. We're going to focus a little bit more on the side and end rails here, primarily because that's where your attachments all typically are placed within the system. You also use the side and end rails to actually connect the panels when you're actually making the forms. And it makes life a lot easier if that is a clean surface versus a surface that has a lot of concrete buildup on it. So we're going to talk about alignment of the panels, basically to hold for dimensional tolerances. And that's also all part of the system. When the reason why you clean the form is to eliminate any concrete buildup that can cause the form to actually spread a little bit or basically walk. So because in lieu of being 24 inches, it may be 24 and an eighth or 24 and a quarter inches. And that panel could throw off the system. Basically, if you had multiple panels lining up like that, it could actually affect your layout of panels and basically your wall. So the process that we typically work with is basically a two-step different process. Panels are checked in and separated. Any of the panels that typically have type 1, what we call a panel frame issue, which usually means broken frame. It could be it's out of square. It basically has a broken cross member. It needs some form of service other than just a cleaning. And then obviously we have the plywood face. The plywood face is where that primarily needs to be cleaned with the side rails. We typically look at the plywood face because that is your casting surface. So we are always aware of what the concrete plywood face looks like because that is going to reflect to your concrete surface. So the policies, the process of which we look at these forms, basically is you're going to receive your forms. You're going to evaluate and inspect them for damage and cleaning method to be applied. And when we talk about cleaning methods, we're talking about can they be cleaned or can they be restored? And from there, we either determine yes or no. If no, we prepare the panel for basically being tossed away. Usually those are panels that are bent beyond repair. The plywood is totally damaged with the cross members torn apart. Or it could be that somebody cut a 20-inch hole in the middle of your panel, which would take out a couple of cross members and your plywood. So those are things that typically cannot be repaired. Those panels actually would then go to a customer charge or basically a charge back to the customer if it's applicable based on your company policy. And then obviously disposal of those materials. Now, if it's a yes, where the panels can be cleaned, etc., repaired, the panels come back in for cleaning.
For me to go out and wash them with my brush.
Yeah, and get your toothbrush out.
Yeah.
And typically what you're going to have, if they require, you're going to determine, do they require repair work? Repair work can be anything from plug to the surface of the concrete, a patch, etc. If that is no, they can then go right to, once you clean them, go to repainting. Repainting is an option that we actually incorporate here at Symons. It is one that typically most dealers do not incorporate. A lot of times customers will have their forms repainted about every 18 to 24 months. Now, if it does require a little bit of work, we go back to restore, basically rework and restore the panel to basically like new condition. And from there, we then prepare the panels for storage and shipment. And if they need to be repaired, we repair them and then send them off to be repainted and then put it back into disposition. So it can either then be ready to go back into the rental yard or it can go back to the customer order, depending on how your orders are coming in and going out. When we talk about clean, well, we're looking at the side rails coming through here where you want to have all your dado slots and your nail holes clear. And you're going to want to have your side rails relatively clear of any concrete buildup on there. allowing concrete to build up on the side of the panel, on the sides or the ends, realistically creates a huge problem. It's bad when it initially happens, but it's one of those problems that snowballs, because if they go out with this type of material on the panel for this job, they will then come back from that next job even worse, more concrete, because you actually have a larger surface area and a roughened surface for the concrete to adhere to. So by cleaning it, you're actually maintaining a good consistent form, size and panel thickness and width, and also making sure all of the connecting points are readily available. So by cleaning it, this is what we're looking at as being as a very well cleaned side ramp. Now, we've had panels come back in similar, if you are in the rental business of Steel-Ply or Sym-Ply, you've seen panels come back like this: concrete filling the dado slots, concrete filling the nail holes. Those typically need to be cleaned out before they can go back out on rent. For those of you that rent panels that are like this and they go back out to the site and you're the contractor working on that site, it's frustrating when you can't find the dado slot to put the wedge through. It gets frustrating for the guy on site because he'll have to end up chipping out that hole. If he's going to chip it out, he's more likely going to do a little more damage than your shop would be if they were to clean it. So now with Sym-Ply, it's the same thing. You got to make sure that the holes are clear. The holes actually are designed so that you can actually make the connections with either speed bolts or wedge bolts through it, even though you're using most general times a clamp system. But once again, using the clamp system means you got to have the rails that butt together uninhibited, and then have the clamp go on in place to wedge in place so that it actually holds its form intact. Here you're seeing holes that are covered with concrete. Is this a huge problem? Well, it could be. And that could be, an issue moving forward, where the holes typically are filled with concrete. If you're looking at this panel is going to be sitting next to an outside corner, you typically would use a speed bolt to actually make the connections on the outside corner for a gang form, just because of the strength of that product. And you'd end up with all sorts of difficulty feeding it through with a concrete filled partial hole. So now that we know about the side rails, once they're clean, let's look at the face surface. Typically, you're going to want to clean off the faces of the concrete form. Typically, I like to use a flathead scraper, something that will not, you won't push down hard enough to actually penetrate into the wood, because that's not a good thing. You want to basically just take off that heavy concrete buildup. And there's a couple of other options you can use to do that. As a dealer, we used to actually take form oil in a rag and actually coat it and wipe off the extra lattice on the face of the concrete form. And then run the machine through our form cleaning machine, which basically has wire brush abraders on the side rails. And what this does is basically takes off all of that lattice and everything on the side rail. Now, if you do not have a machine, and a lot of dealers may or may not have one, they may have one that these are notoriously poor constructability because they end up breaking down quite often.
That's why you have me out there with a toothbrush.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You can take a 9-inch grinding wheel, put a wire brush on the side of it to help clean off the sides of the forms and the edges. It works extremely well for this. Do not take a wire brush or braider to the face of the form because that will just chew up the plywood face. So when we're looking at the plywood face, being that that's going to be your casting surface, we typically use a product called Form Fix. Patching an area can be, usually when you're patching forms, you're going to want to put at least 20 to 30 forms face up on the floor or table or wherever you're working for it. And what this does here, because when you mix up the form fix, you want to mix up a fair amount of that material at one time. You don't want to do small individual forms. It primarily is a gallon container with a little tube of similar to toothpaste, but it's a hardener. And more times than not, I've had guys call looking for the hardener because they used it all up when they mixed up a third of the can of material. What happens is if you mix too much hardener in with it, the material will set up a little bit quicker on you. So what you want to do is you try to portion the material out so that you don't have too much hardener in per batch. So you mix, like I usually try to tell everybody, mix about half a can at a time. Use half a container of the hardener and mix that material and then patch your forms with it. Now, materials that you will need to patch, then you should have readily available. Should be metal ply hole covers. They come in a couple of different sizes, 2 3/4 diameter and 1 3/4 diameter, based off of the hole size that you've got. You're going to want a screwdriver, obviously, repair material, and that's the form fix material. You're going to want to have a grinder available, electric or air grinder. Could be battery operated too now in today's marketplace. You're going to also want a wire cup, a braider, a wire brush or braider, and a 3 or 6 inch putty knife or a broad blade, basically to help spread the form fix on the form. You want a hammer, and basically you're looking at the form fix and the hardener coming in there.
So there's a question. Does Symons use electric or air grinders?
Our grinders right now are air. Although we do have electric grinders up in a couple of our other yards. So we use a combination in the facility based off of what the facility has. Most of the guys, like I said, most of the shops, if they have air available, they'll use an air grinder. If they have electricity available, or possibly they don't have air available, they will go to an electric grinder. So basically what you want to do is when you're inspecting the form, before you start using the form fixture, this is before you prep it and everything, you want to make sure that there's no penetrating holes or gouges in the front top face of the surface. You want to make sure that that's clean and the surface is smooth. If you have a penetrating hole going through the form, you want to make sure that what you're going to do is you are going to take your grinder and grind off the edges of the hole. This increases the bond area of the form fix material to the surface of the plywood. Once you get the edges ground off, you want to clean that all off, flip the form over and put a ply hole cover on the back side. Do not try to attach the ply hole cover first, because what it'll do, it'll get torn off by the grinder when you're trying to actually grind off the angle on that hole. So you do that afterwards, apply the form ply cover, then flip the form back over. As you can see here, here's where we're grinding off the corners to make the surface basically a 45-degree angle on the surface there to actually help increase the surface area and putting the ply hole in the backside. Once you put the ply hole in the backside, you're going to start mixing your form fix material on a scrap piece of plywood. Mix it up so that you actually keep folding the material over until that hardener is mixed thoroughly within the product. Then because you have so much of it, you want to make sure all your forms are ready to go. So you want to have a series of forms ready to go because you don't want it, this material is not a cheap product. And it will harden up with based off of temperature and how much hardener you attach. Excuse me. So you actually put the material, fill the holes, voids, strike it off with your putty knife, let it set, let it harden up. Then what you can do is take your grinder to help smooth that off. Excuse me. Our Steel-Ply. How many patches do we typically permit per pan? Here's a chart that we typically have. Allowable number of patches per form based off of height and width. As you can see, up to about 8 per panel on some of the bigger panels. And on the smaller panels, obviously 2 or 3 before we actually end up saying it's time to reply. Now, plywood surface, when you get a plywood surface that's actually delaminating, then punched holes through, torn, etc. We've all seen these on a lot of the forms that we have out when they come back from job sites. And yes, we do have to take care of these. These forms here typically are it's time to replace to reply them. So to reply, items you're going to need: a strip gun or air hammer. You can also use a hammer drill now for this. Chisel for that hammer drill or hammer gun. An extra retainer spring, because I've had more often than not. On an air hammer, you have a retaining clip, and what happens is that clip will break or fall off, and don't have another one. So always make sure that you've got an extra one laying around. Obviously, if you're using air, you got to have an air compressor. You got to make sure it hoses and clamps and connections. A hammer, a reply table. And a reply table, I'll show you a little bit later what it looks like. Comes in real handy for the guys, especially out in the field. And this is something that can be typically put together by the guys in the shop. You're going to also want to drill 1/4-inch drill bits. You would also want to have a rubber mallet, plywood, obviously new HDO plywood, and drive rivets, and the stripping table. And we will show you what all these are when we get in the coming up here. So first, you're going to check the panel for straightness to make sure, because if the plywood has been torn apart, you want to make sure that the form frame itself is actually square. And you can do this by taking a tape measure and just measuring from corner to corner to make sure that those are consistent, and actually also make sure that there's no broken welds within the frame. I will tell you right now, you do not want to try to weld the frame with the plywood still in the frame, because what happens is because that plywood is saturated with former release agent, it has a tendency to either ignite or get really smoky on the job in your warehouse or out in your shop. So basically, you're going to inspect the inside of the frame form for basically any loose or broken welds. If you find a broken weld, obviously set it off to the side. That you're going to need to pull that plywood off, fix the weld, and then reply. You're gonna check all the cross members, the corner members, and actually the corners of the frame itself to make sure that all the welds are in place and not broken or inconsistent with each other. And then before you reply, you want to make sure you re-weld all of these areas within the form frame itself. You never want to send Steel-Ply out with a cracked frame. What happens is that decreases the load capacity of the frame immensely and can result in form failure. Now, reply operation. On the right side, right top side, you see the frame table. That's our reply table that we have set up. Typically, it enables you to set the frame up with the panel right on it, so the guys can actually work at a comfortable position. It's set up at about a 35 to 30 degree angle. You can actually come in now and break all the welds, break all the pop rivets off, pop all of the plywood out of the surface, out of the frame. By popping all those rivets, that's all that's holding the plywood in place here. You pop the plywood out. Once that plywood comes out, you're going to take your air chisel and run along that edge of the frame here just to clean off any concrete that may build up in there. Once that actually is all cleaned up really well, and a good wire brush always comes in handy for that. So you want to take that off, take that wire brush, scrape all around. Then what you can do is take the form frame from there, attach it to your form table, put your plywood in place, flip the form over so that the plywood is on the bottom, and then drill from the backside with a 1/4-inch drill bit through the form frame into the face of the form. You want to go all the way through. Now, if you're starting to get a lot of tears within the plywood, you need to resharpen your bit or put a new bit in place here. That usually occurs when you have a dull bit. So what you would actually use from there is you will go through here and use pop rivets. Pop rivets basically go into place here. You push it through for the face of the plywood, through the form face, and then what you'll see here, you'll see the little dimple sticking up here on the top of the rivet. You're going to hit that with a hammer. Once it goes in, it actually spreads out the feet on it, securing the system to the pants, securing the plywood to the form. Now, what we also have here, and we didn't talk about, is a number of rivets that are going to be required for a panel. This was a chart that was actually, it comes in real handy for the guys in the back shop, trying to make sure they got enough rivets to do everything that they're looking to. Now, a couple of minor things that you want to make sure you want to take care of too is also your accessories. You've got your turnbuckles. Turnbuckles typically need to be, you have to double check the welds. And the critical welds for most of these are on the turnbuckle component. You want to check all 4 ends, basically all corners on that turnbuckle. The 4 on the top and 4 on the other end. And then you've got to check your weld to the weld condition to the angle plate and to the what I would call the connecting plate. Last but not least, you want to also check, if you're looking at products coming back in, you want to verify that your scaffold brackets are in good shape. Scaffold brackets are important, and they carry a 4-to-1 safety factor. But you got to make sure, because people are going to be standing on top of these. So you want to make sure that they're always in good working order. So you want to verify that the welds are good here, and you want to make sure the rivet is still intact. This actually secures and ensures a proper working system for a scaffolding system within the forming system. You may or may not coat your forms once they get, before they go out on rent. But if you do, Magic Coat is a great option. 1,000 square feet per gallon. It is a reactive blend of material. And what it does is it basically is a buffered reaction material. So it may not act all soapy or anything when you first put it on here, but once the concrete hits it, it actually modifies itself to actually release itself from the concrete, thus making it one of the best form oil, in my opinion, one of the best form oils in the business. Now, with this all said, we've got application resources available for you, both Steel-Ply, Sym-Ply, etc. We've got brochures and application guides, safety and ID charts available, tech data sheets available for you on any of the products that you're looking at. You'll also see on our website, if you do require additional training, please scan the QR code right here on the side here. This will actually set you up to actually get a hold of Heidi and myself. If you can't get a hold of them, just email trainingtuesday@daytonsuperior.com.
Actually, it's just training.
Training
I got excited. I know we're doing a training Tuesday.
I know. Training@daytonsuperior.com. That'll get a hold of Heidi and myself so we can actually get in touch with you for additional training.
That's right. Thanks, Chuck. Sorry, I didn't mean to call you out on that, but maybe we should do a training Tuesday. So guys, is there any other questions that you might have out there? Okay, just a reminder, I don't send emails anymore when these are ready, but they're going to be put out on YouTube and through the DaytonSuperior.com website. So if you just search Training Tuesday, you can sign up for the next one in one link, and the other link will have the latest and greatest that we've done, and this one will be out there, let's say by 4 o'clock. Usually it's before then, but it'll get there. So any other questions, guys? Fantastic. Well, then all of you enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you next week.
Have a good day.